So first of all, let me assert my firm belief that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
So the Oakland A's take.
I'll tell you what, we haven't heard.
I really can't explain it. I mean, earlier in the day, there was reports of there was social media memes going around, these little flyers saying everybody purge today. It's a reference to a movie in which there is, a period of lawlessness.
A state of emergency in place across 4 California counties this morning.
Cause is still unknown, but the aftermath resembles a war zone.
Many of them absolutely confused when they get here. What do they have to do? What sort of status do they have here?
The age of wearable technology.
Amazing things happen when we merge technology with our body.
A historic day in sports as the IBA becomes the future.
This is not about technology. This is about breaking laws. This is not about technology. This is about breaking laws.
So I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.
Well, hey, it's great to see you all here today. My name is Caleb, and I'm the lead pastor here at Project Church, along with my wife, Chrissy, who was up here a little bit ago. And we're just excited for what God's doing in our church. I actually just came from West Sacramento. Today was the grand opening of our West Sacramento campus. And, it went awesome, and had a great group of people there, a lot of new people. And if you're new here, man, I'm so glad you're here. Just want to say hello, and we hope you enjoy your time here at Project Church. You guys are awesome. Thanks for coming to hang with us. But I want to share with you today, we're starting a series called Fearless. And here's the thing, like being fearless, and what this series is about is not the absence of fear in your life, that you'll never be afraid again. But it's about how you respond to your fear. Because I'm here to tell you today that fear is a liar. You see, fear tries to tell you things that God's word and that God isn't speaking over you. Fear tries to tell you you're not good enough. You're not strong enough. You're not smart enough. You're not gifted enough. You can't do this or go here. But God says something different. Because if you have God in your life, if you have God on your life, then He says anything is possible with me. Anything is possible through me. And so the reality is fear is always going to be present in our lives, isn't it? Like fear is a part of living. But it's about how you respond to that fear. In fact, I read this quote this week. It says, fear kills more dreams than failure ever will. And I used to be terrified of failure. And every once in a while it creeps in there. But I've learned and I've realized, I'm like, why would I be afraid of failure? I learn from every failure. Like I learn through every failure. It's fear that stops you from even stepping out and trying something in the first place that we should be afraid of. That's what we should say. I don't want that a part of my life any longer. It's for too long we've let fear rule us and guide us. And fear is a liar. And so this whole series is going to be about, how we confront our fear. How we confront the fear that you and I experience every single day in our lives, in our jobs, in our relationships. I know some of you are like, man, you're in a dating relationship right now. You're terrified. Like, oh my goodness, is this the one? You're scared. But I'm here to tell you, man, when you seek God, when you trust God, when God's over it and He's the focus of it, no matter what situation or circumstance or whatever it might be, there's something that comes in and it's called peace. It's called peace. And sometimes we think the result of faith, because today I'm talking to you about fearless faith, they think the result of faith is courage. But that's not the case. The result of faith is peace. Because when you have peace or when you have faith in God, you know that the results are in His hands and not yours. The results aren't up to you or how good you are, how strong you are, or how confident you are, how gifted you are, or how hard you try. It's about, hey, if God's called me to this, then He's going to do it. So I'm going to trust Him. And when you can trust in God in a situation, guess what reigns? Peace. So today I want to talk about fearless faith. And I want to read from Numbers chapter 13. Numbers 13, if you have your Bibles, you can go there. It'll be on the screen for you. But this is a story. It's a fun story for me to speak on because it's about Caleb and Joshua. I love speaking about myself. No. My parents named me after this person, though, in the Bible. It's a story about the 10 spies that had doubt, that were afraid, and the 2 that had faith. And so I want to read it, but to set it up real quick, I'm going to be reading from Numbers, but I want to go back. You see, in Exodus, God speaks to Moses, right? And He's like, Moses, you need to get my people up out of Egypt. And there was just a movie about it. Christian Bale, who's also Batman, was also Moses. It's awesome. Batman. Yeah. So Exodus, they leave Egypt. They leave captivity. Then we come to Leviticus. Leviticus, so Exodus is the second book of the Bible. Leviticus is the third. Leviticus is the book of the Bible. When you get to it, if you've ever done a year-long Bible reading plan, you get to it and you're like, oh, snap, I don't know if I can do this, right? Because it's like a hard book to read. It's a bunch of laws and rules and regulations. And what's awesome is we're not bound by the old laws, the old rules and regulations, the ceremonial laws, because when Jesus came, he established a new covenant with us. In fact, you may learn something new today. Old Testament, the word testament actually means covenant. So it's the Old Testament of the Bible, Old Covenant, and then the New Testament of the Bible, which is the New Covenant in Jesus Christ. So we're not bound by that old stuff. So then Numbers, 4th book of the Bible. That's what we're going to be reading from today. And it starts out, it's called Numbers because God tells Moses to number the people. Makes sense, right? So He counts them. He counts them up. And then it goes on and it starts talking about, because God had told them when they left Egypt that He had a promised land for them. A land that was going to be flowing with milk and honey. Who loves milk and honey up in here? I do. Okay, a few of you. He said it was going to be a fruitful land. It was going to be a land where you would dwell, where you would live. It's the land of Israel. And so He tells them, I have a promised land for you. And He brings them to the border of the land. And that's where we come today, Numbers chapter 13, because Moses decides he's going to send them out, the spies, one from every tribe. There were 12 tribes in the nation of Israel. And He says, I'm going to send one of you from every tribe, and I want you to scout out the land. Scout it. And come back and give us a report. So I'm going to start reading in chapter 13, verse 17 through 20. Moses sent them to spy out the land of Canaan and said to them, go up into the Negeb and go up into the hill country and see what the land is, whether the people who dwell in it are strong or weak, whether they are few or many, whether the land that they dwell in is good or bad, and whether the cities that they dwell in are camps or strongholds, and whether the land is rich or poor, and whether there are trees in it or not. Be of good courage and bring some of the fruit of the land. Now the time was the season of the first ripe grapes. So I'm going to verse 25 now. This is the report of the spies that Moses has just sent out. At the end of 40 days, they returned from spying out the land, and they came to Moses and Aaron and to all the congregation of the people of Israel. In the wilderness of Paran at Kadesh, they brought back word to them and to all the congregation and showed them the fruit of the land. And they told him, we came to the land which you sent us. It flows with milk and honey. And this is its fruit. It says that it took 2 of them to carry a cluster of grapes. Those are some serious grapes, let me tell you. However, the people who dwell in the land are strong, and the cities are fortified and very large. And besides, we saw the descendants of Anak there, the Amalekites, dwell in the land, the Hittites, the Jebusites, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Perizzites. You know, they're just going on about all kinds of ites. dust mites, and I don't know, they're scared of everything. There's dust mites too. Sorry, a little Bible humor for you. But Caleb quieted the people before Moses and said, "Let us go up at once and occupy it, for we are well able to overcome it." Then the men who had gone up again with him said, "We are not able to go up against the people, for they are stronger than we are." So they brought to the people of Israel a bad report of the land that they had spied out. Let's pray. Jesus, speak to us from your word. Thank you for it. May we be challenged to live with fearless faith today as we will go out from this place. In your name, Jesus, we pray. Amen. Amen. Thanks, Oleg. Appreciate it. So, I want to explain to you how fear lies. Fear is a liar. And I want to do that by contrasting faith and fear. So I got 3 points for you today. We're going to have faith and fear, man. They're going to square off right now. They're facing each other. Number one, faith blazes a trail. Fear follows the crowd. So how many of you guys remember back in the day when like you recorded the radio with the tape? Anybody ever record the radio, or was I the only one? Okay, cool. A lot of you feel me? Okay, you're of my generation. Some of these young people today, man, these young whippersnappers, they don't know about tapes, man. They don't even know about CDs barely. All they know is iPods. So I know I'm so old. That's what you guys are looking at me saying, yeah. So I grew up, man. I grew up recording the radio, and I would make mixtapes. That's where the title mixtape comes from, right? I would make for real mixtapes, and I grew up off of Calvine, like Vintage Park area. I grew up playing basketball, so I'm a little hip hop, as you can tell. You know, I know y'all are sitting out there thinking that I'm a little hip hop. So I would just be sitting there recording the radio. My wife's dying laughing. Recording, she's seen me dance. So I would just be sitting there recording the radio, just waiting for 112's Cupid to come on. I just could not wait. Little Blackstreet, No Diggity, man. That's what I was waiting for, okay? I would make the dopest mixtapes. I wish I still had some of them. Might get a commercial here or there, but for the most part, it was songs. So I'd make these mixtapes, and then every once in a while I'd like slip them to my friends, slip them to a few ladies, you know what I'm saying? Like, you got to do what you got to do when you're in junior high. Like, I made this for you, you know? Boys to Men. It was awesome. So yeah, I'd make mixtapes, man. It was awesome. And me and my brother would do it. We'd record the radio. I mean, looking back is so hilarious, and you guys feel me because you did it too. But then the time came, I was in like junior high, and all these girls started listening to country music. We got any country fans up in here? What? A lot of you. Okay. Like, I never listened to country. I'm in like junior high, and some of these girls are like, "Could you make me a country mixtape?" I'm like, country? Country? I'm from Vintage Park, people. No. Country music. And so they'd be asking me for country. I'm like, I don't know any country. Then they start telling me about Tim McGraw and, I don't know, Faith Hill and all these kinds of people, Garth Brooks. And so man, country was, I guess, it was cool. But I was like, all right, I'll do it. And so I started like recording country, but recording country music on tape off the radio meant I had to listen to country music on the radio. And it was I just still don't like country. I'm sorry. I've tried. And I respect you if you like country, but it's just not for me. And so I tried and I would record it. And why? Because I was afraid, man. I was afraid of these girls. They wanted a country mixtape. I'm like, yes, whatever you want. Like, I will appease you. So I would make these country mixtapes. But I'm joking around today. But faith blazes a trail, and fear follows the crowd. It's funny, isn't it, how a group of people can have the same experience and yet walk away with a totally different viewpoint on the experience? Like, you ever been to a movie with someone and you walk out, you're like, that was dope. They're like, that was horrible. That was the worst movie I've ever seen. Have you ever had that happen? A few of you? Okay, it's happened to me a lot of times. And so it's interesting, I think, as we look at this story, and here are 12 spies that go out, and as they go out, they come back, and it says that they spent 40 days. So if you've ever been on a trip with people, you get close, don't you? You get tight. I mean, there's bonds that are made. And these 12 guys go out 40 days in the wilderness or in the promised land exploring. They're hiding, they're on the run. They're keeping their head down. They're checking out cities, checking out the people, looking at the fruit of the land, all these kinds of things, 40 days. In fact, if we read and study the land that they went to where Moses told them to go and where they came back and reported from, it says that they probably traveled, we can estimate around 220 miles together. Which you guys are like, that's not a big deal. It is when you're on foot or camel, okay? Over 40 days, 220 miles, exploring this promised land. And they come back, and 10 of them say, we can't do it. 10 of them say, the land is too strong. 10 of them say, the people are too tall. 10 of them say, the cities are too big. They're too fortified. You see, our viewpoint often determines our outcome. And the majority of these people, their viewpoint was, we can't do it. But two stood up and said, we can do this. We can do this. In fact, in chapter 14, Caleb goes on. Here's what he says. He says that he quiets the people. Understand this. Blazing trails gets people to pay attention, doesn't it? When you step out, when you live by faith, people see that and they pay attention. And this is what Caleb says. He says, let's occupy it. Let's occupy it. For we are well able to overcome it. Let's occupy it. But you know what blazing trails gets you often? Criticism. When you step out in faith, when you live by faith, when you blaze trails, when you don't follow the crowd, you're going to get criticized for it. You may be mocked for it. You may be laughed at for it. But here's what I want to tell you today, and I believe this is one of the greatest lies of the church. And I've said this to our church before, but I want to say it to you again. One of the greatest lies of the church is that what I'm doing right here on Sunday mornings is more holy than what you do on Mondays and on Monday mornings. That what I'm doing, standing up here proclaiming God's word, is more holy than what you do Monday through Friday at your jobs. And here's what I would say to you. That God is calling us, you and I, if we're going to be people of fearless faith, we must blaze trails, but he's calling us and he's saying what Caleb said, and he's saying it's time to occupy your job. To go into your job and to change your perspective and to occupy it as you are on mission for Jesus. And I know some of you are out there going, Caleb, but I hate my job. Like, I'm trying to get up out of this thing right now. That's okay. If you're in it right now, then God's called you to it right now, so you need to do it in a way that honors him. We should be the best workers at our jobs. God's people. We should be the best. Why? Because we're doing it to point people to him. You should have the best work ethic at your job. You should be the most joyful person at your job, because when we live this way, it sets us apart. We need to occupy our jobs. We need to occupy wherever God has placed us and whatever God has called us to. We need to go into it and say, God, you've called me here. I'm going to live on mission for you because what I'm doing is holy. What you're doing every day, day in and out, is holy. If you're a stay-at-home mom, it's holy. You have a mission to raise those children in a loving way so that they love Jesus. If you're at work, you're on a mission to point people by your work ethic, by your heart, by your attitude to Jesus. We need to occupy wherever God's placed us. You're at school. Some of you are in college right now. And I don't want you to look back and be like, man, I missed it. I had an opportunity to be there, to occupy this campus and to point people to Jesus, and I missed it. What if? I wish I could go back. We need to occupy wherever God has placed us. The other day, I was talking to my chiropractor, and I've been having like some extreme neck issues over the last year. My wife can tell you almost every month there's like a week where I'm on the ground in pain, and I've been going to this chiropractor the last 2 months, the first 2 months straight in the last year where I have not been in pain. It's been amazing, and I'm grateful. But I was talking to him the other day, and every time I talk to him, he tells me about how God is using him as a chiropractor. And so he's telling me how he when he works on people, like doing the chiropractic thing, that he's literally like, God, use me as your agent. God, help me to bring freedom to these people's pain. God, use me. And he's literally praying over these people as he's working on them. They don't know it, all right? You don't got to get weird at your job, okay? Like some of you are working at McDonald's and you're like speaking in tongues as people are coming through and they're like, what? Well, I don't know. Like, chill out, all right? I don't know where that came from. So he told me, like, he prays over them. They don't know it, but he's praying over them as he's working on them. And he says he feels the Spirit of God work through him every single time. He said this it was just a couple weeks ago, he started working on this girl, or he's been working on her for the last few months, but he was just working on her recently. She's 16 years old, been in excruciating pain for the last 4 years of her life. So much so that half the time she can't even stand up straight. She's been on so many pain medications that now she's having liver and kidney issues because of all the pain medications she's been taking just to survive. The doctors were saying, okay, we have to do this extreme surgery, which was very dangerous. It could potentially hinder her for the rest of her life. And she heard about him and went to him. And she went to him, and he started working on her, and she started getting a little better. And every time he worked on her, she would thank him. And this last time he worked on her, just a couple weeks ago, he just told me this last week. He said he was working on her, and he did something, popper or whatever you chiropractors do. And he's working on her, and he felt like this thing happened, this release, and she literally was like, oh my goodness, I feel amazing. This is literally the best I've ever felt in my life. And she lit up, and he said as this happened, before she even said anything, he started to weep. And then it got weird, right? So he's like, dude, he's like, Caleb, I'm trying to hide it. I'm like, oh, I got something in my eye, He's trying to hide it. Hide it from this girl because, that's weird when you're doing chiropractic work and then all of a sudden you're crying. Like, they don't know what's happening. But he said, here's why I was crying, Caleb. Because as I was working on her and that release happened, I literally felt the Spirit of God move through me into her. And he said it wasn't just that I did something that I know because of the training I've had and the medical school I've gone to. It wasn't just about that. It was something else that happened too. The Spirit of God literally touched her in that moment. And I'm telling you this to say, we need to have a different perspective of where God's called us day in and day out. That wherever we go, we are on mission. Wherever we go, we say, I'm going to occupy this job. I'm going to occupy my family. I'm going to occupy these relationships. I'm going to do it with love and with light because that's what Jesus has called me to do. And here's the thing. When you occupy it, when you go in this way, you blaze a trail wherever you go. Because there's something different about you. There's something that sets you apart. There's something that people will say, and the time will come, and they'll be like, what is it about you, man? And you have that opportunity to say, I'll tell you what it is. His name is Jesus. And he's changed me, and he's touched me, and he works through me, and his Spirit is in me. Number 2, faith sees who's for us. I got to keep going here. Faith sees who's for us. Fear sees who's against us. What are these? These spies, all they can focus on is who's against them. And I know some of you in here, you're like more pessimists. You're glass half empty people. Some of you are more optimists, glass half full people. But here's the thing. God's people need to start operating in a different way than the world. God's people should operate in a different way than the world. God's people should be operating with joy and hope and faith for greater things. We should have a level of optimism to us. I know some of you are like, I'm pessimist. That's okay. But we need to have a level of optimism to us and understand today that these spies, man, they're exaggerating. In fact, it says that and I read the verse where they're like, yeah, the descendants, and they list off all these different tribes, but like the descendants of Anak are there. The descendants of Anak are there. Now, the descendants of Anak, in Hebrew, it literally means neck or long neck. And these were individuals who were known, it was somewhat myth lore, that these individuals were known for being extremely tall, like giants. And so they bring this up. They're like, you've heard of the Anakites, the descendants of Anak. They're up in there too. They're exaggerating. I mean, in reality, those people no longer existed on the earth, but they're using this to try to scare the people. They're exaggerating. Not only that, but like these cities, they're too big, they're too fortified. We can't take them. Now understand this. I love the Bible because it's so historically accurate. In fact, they have dug up these same areas in the land of Israel that we read about here, and they found cities that are dated to this same time. In fact, they found one of these same cities that we read about here, and they say that it was estimated, based on the city and the walls that they found, that there were about 40,000 people living in the city. And so they say, oh, wow, there's 40,000 people in this city. I don't think we can take it. There's walls. That's a lot of people. And here's the thing. The Israelites were rolling 2 million plus deep. 2 million. Not only that, but their army was, they say, pushing 500,000 men. And here come the spies exaggerating, trying to say, oh, we can't do it because there's a big city of 40,000 people. You see, faith sees who's for us, but all fear sees is who's against us. It can't focus on who's with us, who's on our side, and the fact that first and foremost, God is for us. And the Bible says if God is for us, who can be against us? So I want to tell you something right now. I heard it recently from another preacher, another pastor, and I want to share it with you today because I believe it's going to change our perspective, and I believe it speaks to people that we're for them and not against them. So my wife, she asks me like every week, can we go to Australia? Every week. Caleb, can we go to Australia? Next Sunday is our 7-year wedding anniversary. Yes. Babe, we've made it. 7 whole years. It's God's number. It's a good year. So 7 years, 3 children, and now 2 churches. 2 church plants later since West Sac launched today. But my wife asks me every week, can we go to Australia? Just take me to Australia. She tells me all the time, she really wants to go. And every time, this is how I react. How? How are we going to go to Australia? We have an 8-month-old, right? A 2.5-year-old, a 4-year-old. We are poor. How are we going to go to Australia? We don't have money to go to Australia. We can't be bringing a baby along with us to Australia. How are we going to go to Australia? This week I was listening and I hear this pastor and he said this, and I want to share it with you because I believe this is how we should respond to our spouses when they come to us with ideas. This is how we should respond to our coworkers when they come to us with ideas. This is how I want to operate with my team at our church when they come to me with ideas, is we need to respond wow before we respond how. We need to say wow before we say how. Because wow changes what people feel when they come to us with something. Now they say, you're for me. When my wife comes to me and says, can we go to Australia? I say, good day, mate. Let's throw another shrimp on the barbie and let's go. And I say, wow, what an amazing idea. We should do it. Now let's talk about how we're going to do that. It changes the things, doesn't it? Because people see that we're for them, we're not against them. And the problem is, in this culture, in this world, is everyone is just seeing a bunch of people who are against them. That we're against our spouses even. They come to us with an idea for our family, with how we should operate, with how we can be closer to God, and we just say, how, why? How, why? No, we need to respond, wow, what an amazing idea. Wow. Can we do that? Can we do that work? Can we do that with our spouses? Can we do that with our friends? Can we do that with our coworkers? Let's respond wow instead of how. So these spies, they're like, the land is flowing with milk and honey. Here's the fruit, but the people are strong. And then they list off all the individuals that are against them. All they can focus on is who's against them. You see, faith sees who's for us, and that's what Caleb and Joshua see. In fact, if we read it in chapter 14, it says that Caleb and Joshua actually say, don't rebel against God. Don't do this. Don't rebel against God. I want to read verse 8 and 9. And this is what Caleb and Joshua say, because they're still saying we can't do it. It says, if the Lord delights in us, he will bring us into the land and give it to us, a land that flows with milk and honey. Only do not rebel against the Lord, and do not fear the people of the land. So there we go. Don't fear. Don't be afraid. Do not fear the people of the land, for they are bread for us. Their protection is removed from them, and the Lord is with us. Do not fear them. He says it twice. Do not fear. You see, God's people, we got to change our mindset, our thinking. If you're in here and you're new to our church, maybe you're not on this faith journey. You don't necessarily believe in God. You don't necessarily believe in Jesus. That's okay. Because you know why I love this church? Because you don't have to believe to belong. That's what this church is about. You can belong here even before you believe. And we're here to walk this faith journey with you. We're patient, man, along this journey. And even if you're here and you're like, I don't know, I'm kind of a skeptic, doubter, agnostic, atheist, that's okay. You still belong here with us. You want to know why? Because God loves you. And we believe that, and so you can walk this faith journey with us. But when you know who's for you, you live with a different perspective, don't you? You live differently when you know who's for you. We need to focus more on what God is saying than what we are seeing. And too many of us are seeing all the obstacles. We're seeing why things won't work out. We're seeing some giants in our lives, like the Israelites here. We're seeing some giants, and so we hesitate. We back off. We get afraid. We don't step out. The result of faith, like I said earlier, isn't courage, it's peace. When we have faith in God, when we have a fearless faith, peace begins to enter into the relationships. Peace begins to enter into our life. Peace begins to enter into our decision. We say, God, if you're calling me to it, then I know you're going to do it. So I'm going to step out in faith, and I'm going to trust you. I'm going to leave what happens. I'm going to leave the results in your hands. That's why peace is present, because the results aren't you any longer. The results are up to God. Peace reigns when we trust in him. Third and finally. So first, we need to know that faith blazes a trail, but fear follows the crowd. Second, that faith sees who's for us, while as fear sees who's against us. And third and finally, faith sees the future opportunity, while fear sees the present comfort. These Israelites in chapter 14, verse 1 and 2, they start talking about going back to Egypt. Can you imagine this? Like, you've just seen miracle after miracle. God protect you. God bring you out of bondage, out of slavery. You've seen crazy stuff. And now you are on the cusp of the promise. And you say, can we go back to Egypt? Can we go back to slavery? That seems better to me. Like, I'd much rather do that than die out here. You see, fear, the reason I said fear is a liar, I said that to you, is because fear gives the illusion of safety. Fear gives the illusion that you're safe. If I step out there and go after this land and step into this land that I know God's promised me, if I step out to this promise that God has spoken over me, something bad could happen. So you know what? I'm going to go back to what I know. Can we go back to slavery? I'm comfortable with that. I know that. I know wandering. I don't know that. I don't know the promise. I've never been in the promised land. I don't know what's going to happen here. You see, fear is a paralyzing agent, isn't it? It literally freezes us, and then all we want to do is go backwards. God's people are not people that go backwards. God's people move forward in faith. And that's what this church is about, man. We said, let's continue to move forward with faith. Let's speak faith over the people of this church. God doesn't want us going back. He wants us going forward. He doesn't want us going back to our past slavery, our past bondage, the things that you have that have bound you up inside, that have bound you up, sin, and all this other stuff, relationships you shouldn't be in. And some of you are wanting to go back to that stuff, and God's saying, no, it's time to go forward into the promise. I've got a better relationship for you. I've got a specific spouse picked out for you. I've got a better job for you. I've got a greater dream for you. Stop going back to what's comfortable and start stepping in to what I have for you, the promise. Some of us are trapped in our old way of thinking, and we're on the doorstep of freedom. We're in these cycles, aren't we? These cycles, we just keep going back to it. And right when we get to like, okay, I could do something new. I can step out in faith. There's a promise. There's an opportunity right in front of me. But I don't know that. We just go back into the cycle. We step back, go through it again, and then God brings us back to it again. No, I'm going back. And God's saying, all you got to do is have faith. All you got to do is change your way of thinking. Because if you change your way of thinking, you'll change who you are. And when you change who you are, you'll change your results. And then all you'll do is step out in faith. Say, I don't know what's going to happen. And God's saying, that's okay, I got you. And you step out and peace reigns. Peace reigns in our lives. It's not the giants in the land that hold us back often. It's the giants in our hearts. These giants of unbelief, these giants of complacency, these giants of fear. Some of you are here today, you're going, Caleb, this is like good and all, but you don't know me. And I may not know you. You don't know me, Caleb. I don't know how to change. I don't know how to do this. Well, I can tell you right now, it's a simple first step. You just say, God, I'm going to follow you. God, I'm going to stop trusting in what I know and start trusting in who you are. And when you do that, things change. That you don't let fear lead you anymore. You don't let your doubt lead you anymore. You don't let who you've been lead you anymore. But you say, God, I know, and I'm just going to trust in you. Whatever it is you're putting in front of me. You see, the theme verse of this whole series is 2 Timothy 1:7, that God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind, or self-control, some versions say. God did not come to give you a spirit of fear. And I love in 1 John chapter 4, verse 18, it says, there is no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear. Perfect love casts out fear. So I'm here to tell you today, this church is unashamedly, unabashedly, and unafraid to tell you that there's only one person that can fulfill you. There's only one person that can save you. There's only one way to heaven. There's only one path to the Father, and his name is Jesus. We're not afraid to tell you that because that's the truth. That Jesus came to remove your fear because he was perfect love. I love Jesus. He changed my life. He continues to change me every single day. There is no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear. Perfect love came to this earth in the form of Jesus. He came and he lived a perfect life. He lived a perfect, sinless life for you and for me. And he came and he said, you no longer have to be bound by fear. I'm going to fill you with faith. You no longer have to be ruled by doubt. I'm going to fill you with greater faith than ever before. Perfect love casts out all fear. So here's the answer to your fear problem, to my fear problem, Jesus. If we let perfect love in, fear is out. When we let perfect love in our lives, fear is gone. Jesus came. And he said, you don't need that fear anymore. You don't need to be ruled by fear anymore. And here's the thing. Some of you are on the, man, you're on the board. I keep stepping out of these lights just to mess with these guys today. Some of you are on the border of the promised land, a promise that God has given you, an opportunity that he's put in front of you. And here's the thing with the Israelites. You know what happens to them, right? They don't believe. They don't have faith. They don't trust that God will work on their behalf. And so he says, fine, you're going to wander in the desert for 40 years. And none of you are going to receive the promise. None of you. You see, only 2 people entered the promised land. Caleb and Joshua. 2 people out of 2 million. The rest of them died off, and then a new generation was born and raised up, and Caleb and Joshua led them into the promised land. So I'm here to tell you today, your fear may be holding you back from a promise that God has for you right now. From a greater blessing that God has for you right now. And all you got to do is say, I'm going to have faith. I'm going to trust in God. And I'm going to step out into the promise that he has for me. Would you bow your heads with me all across this place?